I didn't mean to say it out loud. Honestly, if you asked me, I would have sworn I only thought it. But no, there it was, echoing in the open air, slipping past the translator node like it was proud of itself. You're kind of cute when you're mad. Silence. That kind of silence that usually follows a catastrophic engine failure, or someone accidentally opening an airlock during karaoke night. 20 armored heads turned in unison. Clank, clank, clank. Helmets swiveled like angry sunflowers. Their glowing red visors locked onto me with the collective disgust of a species that considered smiling an act of war. Zrakth Valyuri, the very same war-scarred, 2-meter-tall, plasma blade-certified alien commander who once took down a bounty worm with her teeth, froze mid-step. One boot hovered, uncertain, above the cracked training yard. Her posture faltered for the first time in what was surely centuries of disciplined, spine-murdering combat stances. And then slowly, the color of her skin, normally a dignified dark lavender, started to shift. Oh no, it began at her neck, crawled up her cheekbones like a sunrise of doom, and settled into a bright, impossible shade of violet. Her ears twitched. Her left eye spasmed. I briefly considered whether this was the moment I died, possibly in a very creative, very squishy way. She didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there, glowing like an embarrassed nebula, while 50 recruits gawked at her and one very doomed human wished the ground would open up and swallow him into a molten core of regret. Behind me, someone made a sound suspiciously like a snort, probably Trevor. Jerk. Well, that's one way to fail planetary diplomacy, he muttered. I panicked, I hissed back. She was yelling at me and it came out. Your death will be swift, someone else whispered reverently, but glorious. I wasn't sure if that was meant as comfort. Zrakth blinked, once, slowly, the way a bird of prey might blink before lunging at a wounded squirrel. Her eyes, those dual-irised, impossible alien eyes, narrowed at me. My legs considered detaching themselves and running away without consulting the rest of my body. Instead of eviscerating me, though, she finally marched away. Wait, that's it? She resumed the drill like nothing had happened, leaving behind a battalion of confused warriors and one human whose internal organs were now auditioning for new positions. What just happened? I asked no one in particular. Trevor leaned in, whispering like a conspiracy theorist during an asteroid storm. Dude, you made her blush. I didn't know their species could blush. Should I apologize? Oh yeah, definitely. Right after she pins your lungs to a flagpole. I spent the rest of the march sweating through my synth uniform, very aware of how Zrakth's shoulder plates flexed every time she turned, of how her hand drifted once, just once, toward her pulse cannon, before deciding otherwise. That night I lay in my bunk, staring at the flickering ceiling of the Terran wing, while Trevor snored like an overfed warthog. The Academy AI buzzed a lullaby through the walls in binary classical. I couldn't sleep. A new message had appeared on my holopad, from an untraceable user. One word. Cute? I dropped the pad onto my chest like it was radioactive. Oh no, I whispered. She noticed. The cafeteria smelled like burnt plasma rations and unresolved tension. I was halfway through a protein square labeled "tastes like chicken." It didn't, when the first whisper reached me. It came from the table behind mine, low, cautious, like a tech officer trying not to set off a volatile algorithm. That's the human who said it. I pretended not to hear, which was difficult, considering the entire right side of my face was twitching from the nerves. I took another bite of the protein square. Now it tasted like panic. He flirted with Commander Valyuri, out loud, during drills. Another whisper, this time from the ventilation shaft above me. I looked up to see a pair of tiny, glowing insectoid eyes vanish into the darkness. Great. Even the duck dwellers knew. Trevor dropped his tray onto the table and sat across from me with the elegance of a collapsing exosuit. Do you have any idea how famous you are right now? I didn't even mean to say it. You called her cute, man. Cute. That's like telling a black hole it has nice curves. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, but it's poetic, right? He shoved a spoonful of green gloop into his mouth and chewed with the same expression I'd seen on malfunctioning drones. The memes are spreading, he said, mouthful. There's one with her glowing face, and the caption, when he calls you cute mid-death glare. It's already got 7 million clicks in the outer belt. 7 million? Are you kidding me? You're trending, buddy. Interstellar trending. Before I could process that existential crisis, my wristband beeped, a direct ping from the Academy command grid. I tapped it, praying it was a notification for a surprise nap or a fire drill. It wasn't. Summons. Commander Zurath Valyuri. Deck 9 Combat Atrium. 1600 hours. Trevor leaned over, chewing slower now. Oh no, she's going to suplex your soul. It's a combat atrium. That's where people go to punch things. Maybe it's a romantic gesture. You know, in her culture. Beat the stuffing out of someone to say, I like you. It's kind of sweet. I stared at him. Trevor. Last week, she bisected a sparring drone because it beeped too cheerfully. He shrugged. Some people fear intimacy. By the time I reached Deck 9, I'd rehearsed 8 possible apologies, 3 fake illnesses, and 1 elaborate lie about being a clone of myself with no memory of the incident. None of them survived contact with reality. Zurath was already there, standing in the middle of the atrium like a statue sculpted from thread. She wore her combat armor, gleaming, jagged and humming faintly like it was annoyed to exist. Her expression was unreadable, but the color on her cheeks had settled into a soft violet flush. Terran, she said, voice like a vibrating monolith. You called me cute. I cleared my throat. Yes, well, technically, it was more of an accidental emotional discharge. Accidental. Yes, kind of like a verbal sneeze. Only more embarrassing. She stepped forward. My spine snapped to attention. I considered becoming mist. I have reviewed Terran customs, she said, tapping her holoband. Flirtation is complex, often misleading, frequently accompanied by food offerings. I blinked. That's not wrong. She handed me a container. Inside was a single steaming cube of something. It glowed faintly, wiggled once. I have synthesized this from your nutritional database. It is labeled comfort food. I took the cube. It pulsed in my hand like a nervous jellyfish. You made me a snack. I have no intentions to consume you, she added very seriously, unless required by diplomacy. I thank you? Zurath crossed her arms. I request another compliment. For data comparison. I hesitated. Your war scream is majestic, like a banshee riding a comet. Her ears twitched. Then, just slightly, she smiled, or bared her teeth. Hard to tell. Either way, my heart did something unfortunate. She nodded. Acceptable. The first punch nearly took my head off. To be fair, Zurath did warn me. She stood in the center of the sparring arena, her arms crossed, voice calm, like a meteor right before it hits. This is not a date, she had said. Right, I replied, already regretting everything. It is a training session. Totally normal, not a date, casual violence. Got it. She handed me a weapon, or rather, what I thought was a weapon. It looked like 2 boomerangs fused in a forbidden science experiment. It hissed and clicked and unfolded into something I promptly dropped. Apologies, she said, crouching to retrieve it with the grace of a panther wrapped in steel. This is a L-Thac dueling blade. It responds to neural intent. That's neat. My intent is not to die. Acceptable. I will hold back. That's deeply comforting, thank you. The other cadets had gathered along the arena's edge. Some pretended to be casually adjusting their armor. Others had full recording drones out. One held up a sign that read, R.I.P. Human. I picked up the dueling blade again. It vibrated like it was nervous to be wielded by me. We squared off. Zurath lunged first. Her movements were so fast they seemed to break physics in half. I reacted the only way I knew how, by flinching dramatically and falling over. Is that part of your strategy? She asked, circling me. Yes, I said from the floor. It's called spontaneous prone defense. She tilted her head. Innovative. I scrambled to my feet and swung wildly. The blade sparked against hers with a flash of orange energy, followed by the very distinct smell of something catching fire. Was it me? Possibly. Your form is chaotic, she said as I flailed. It's improvisational, I replied, dodging what might have been a lethal pirouette. The match lasted longer than expected. I didn't win so much as survive creatively. At one point I tripped over my own feet, spun, and accidentally bonked her on the shoulder with the flat of the blade. It made a honking sound. That part might have been my imagination. Zarakth froze. The room went silent. Again. I wondered if I'd somehow committed an interstellar insult. Maybe in her culture, bonking someone on the shoulder meant declare war or marry me. Same energy, really. Then she did something I hadn't seen before. She laughed, a short, sharp bark of a sound that startled even the drones. It echoed around the chamber like a sonic boom of unexpected joy. You fight like a malfunctioning hoverbot, she said. Thank you, I wheezed, barely able to stand. That's actually the nicest thing anyone said to me this week. The cadets started clapping. I wasn't sure if it was applause or a slow-motion farewell salute. Either way, it felt like I'd just been hazed into something, possibly an engagement. Back in the locker bay, Trevor threw a towel at me. You elbowed a war hero in the jaw. I slipped. She's probably planning your wedding as we speak. I'm going to die. Maybe. But romantically. As I peeled off the armor, my holoband buzzed. Zarakth Valyuri has sent you a gift. It was a certificate. You have survived honorable combat. Your heart is acceptable. There was also a small sketch, a crudely drawn version of me falling with my arms flailing and a tiny alien heart hovering above. She'd drawn it herself. Trevor leaned over my shoulder and muttered, Dude, you're in. They say no good deed goes unpunished. Turns out surviving an accidental alien courtship via sparring match counts as a very good deed because the punishment was swift, shiny, and came with paperwork. The next morning I was summoned to the Coalition Administrative Hall. That might sound dignified, but it's essentially a floating bureaucracy bunker full of holographic clipboards and sentient staplers. I sat across from a jellyfish-like diplomat named Ambassador Velnax 12, who pulsed disapprovingly every time I breathed. You have caused a diplomatic fluctuation, Velnax said, voice clicking through a vocalizer that sounded like jazz played by angry robots. Commander Valyuri's emotional response has been logged as culturally anomalous. I didn't mean to make her blush, I replied, hands sweating. It just happened. Her ears wiggled and I panicked. Velnax twitched. You engaged in unsanctioned emotional exchange with a Class C combatant. Do you understand the potential consequences? I was barely awake and she glows when she's annoyed. That's not fair. She glowed when she was emotionally compromised. So, annoyed but flattered? Velnax floated a little higher. Your presence on this campus now poses a risk to interspecies emotional stability. You are to undergo cultural sensitivity debriefing. That sounds incredibly dull. It will be excruciating. Trevor naturally found this hilarious. They're sending you to flirt school, he said back in our room, holding a bowl of glowing noodles with chopsticks made from recycled drone legs. You broke Zarakh's brain, and now you have to sit in therapy with a fungus. It's not a fungus, it's a spore being named Craig. Craig waved from the corner, where it had absorbed 3 chairs and a ficus. We shall unlock your heart's chaos, it murmured soothingly. 3 hours later, I sat in a circular pod, surrounded by representatives of 7 different species, each of whom had apparently majored in emotional regulation and minor threats. The Volgren delegate tried to strangle me with affection. The feline ambassador purred threateningly. Craig passed me a flower it had grown from guilt. Meanwhile, Zarakth had gone radio silent. No holotechs, no surprise snacks, no invitations to combat flirt. She'd retreated, according to the rumor feed, into the room of focus, which sounded like either a meditation chamber or a reinforced punching arena. Probably both. I sent her a message. Just one. Are you okay? No response. Trevor poked his head in while I was mid-anxiety spiral. You need to do something big, he said. Grand gesture, alien romantic style. Think, Less flowers, more battle hymns. Like, serenade her in the warbay? Too subtle. What about a holographic mural of your combat failure? She loved that. I paced. She said my heart was acceptable. Is that good, or is that like alien for I'll eat it later? You're overthinking it. I once overthought a vending machine, and it caught fire. Exactly. So this time, go with your gut. The next day, I hijacked the Academy announcement system. I stood in the atrium, voice shaking, heart doing jazz solos, and declared in front of everyone, cadets, instructors, and probably at least one interdimensional tourist. Commander Zirath, I respectfully request the honor of your next sparring match/courtship duel. I'll bring the snack cubes, you bring the axes. The announcement echoed. Several aliens hissed. One swooned. Still no answer. That night I received a message. One word. Approved. Attached was a calendar invite with fire emojis. Trevor leaned over, sipped from his glowing cup, and said, if this ends with marriage, I am absolutely making a speech about the elbow thing. Zirath volunteered for the recon mission before anyone could stop her. When I found out, it was already too late. Her name had been etched into the ops board, glowing red beside the mission codename, Ash Frost Orbit. Everyone knew what that meant. Deep space, low support, high chance of dismemberment. The kind of assignment designed for someone trying to feel nothing or everything at once. I tried to act casual when I confronted her in the hangar bay. So, big scary solo op, huh? I said, attempting to lean against a supply crate. It hissed, beeped, and ejected a smoke bomb. I coughed through it. Good times. Zirath barely glanced at me. She was adjusting her gauntlet, which made a faint growling noise. There is a tactical breach in the perimeter of the Vorus line. I volunteered. You volunteered. Yes. You, Zirath, you hate volunteering. You didn't even want to sign up for the Academy picnic. There were too many pies. It was overwhelming. And now you want to go solo into Vorax 9 territory? She paused. Her jaw tensed. Her mandible twitch, the one I now recognized as emotional hesitation, flared and faded. This has nothing to do with you, she said. Cool, I replied, pretending to be chill while my soul tripped down a staircase. I returned to my quarters and paced until the floor I told me to stop. Then I did the only reasonable thing. I stole a mech suit and stowed away in her ship. Well, not a good mech suit. I got the one that creaked when you bent your knees and had a navigation system powered by outdated horoscopes. It also greeted me every time I moved. Hello, pilot, it shouted as I hid behind a cargo container. Shh, for the love of gravity, shut up. Hello! Please. By the time Zirath discovered me, we were already entering orbit around the ash-blasted rock called Sci-Fi. She looked at me like I was a roach that had learned to play chess. You are... here. I am, I said brightly, helmet slightly askew. Thought I'd help. You know, emotional support human, like a therapy squirrel but taller. She stared at me. I braced for the yelling. Instead, she sighed. Very well, but if you malfunction, I will bury you in the crater. That's fair. Sci-Fi was gray, cracked, and humming with static. Vorax 9 had left its mark. Drones scattered like broken beetles, signal towers blinking eerie green, and a hum in the air like someone whispering in binary. We moved through the ruins in silence, her scanning ahead with her arm module, me tripping over alien debris and pretending I meant to. Then we found it, the core terminal. Zirath knelt beside it. The hive mind is evolving. I thought it was just evil Wi-Fi. It is seeking emotion. It wants to feel. It is mimicking organic minds. Great, so basically a galactic teen writing poetry in the dark. Suddenly the terminal blinked. A voice oozed out of the speakers. Cold, curious. You are inefficiently entangled. Illogical proximity detected. That's rude, I muttered. Zirath growled. We are not entangled. He is an idiot. Yet your pulse rises. Your data synchronizes. He provokes hormone spikes. I blinked. Wait, you scanned us? Analyzing organic attraction, simulating yearning. Zirath's armor locked. Her blush returned with vengeance. "I will crush it," she muttered. "Wait," I said. "Let me try something." I stepped forward. The terminal buzzed with anticipation. I cleared my throat. "Dear Vorax 9, feelings suck. They're confusing, they're messy, and they make you sneak onto ships and almost get vaporized." "Go on." "But that's what makes them fun. That's what makes people care. It's not efficient, it's chaos with meaning. Like jazz, or socks with sandals." The terminal sparked, hummed, then shut down with a tiny electronic sob. We stood in silence. Then Zarak turned to me. "That was the most illogical, emotionally reckless thing I've ever witnessed." "You're welcome." And then she almost smiled. "We were stranded on SETI 4D. Well, not technically stranded. The ship still existed. It was just upside down, half buried in obsidian dust, and softly smoldering from what I assumed was the universe's disapproval of my piloting decisions. "I landed us," I said proudly, brushing soot off my sleeve. Zarak glanced at the wreck, then back at me. "You crashed us. Potato. Besides, we're alive. For now." She stalked off toward the smoldering hull, mumbling about hull integrity and Terran spatial incompetence. I followed, trying to look useful. My mech suit's leg was sparking every third step, and occasionally tried to moonwalk. Our comms were down. Emergency beacon? Burned. Backup emergency beacon? Slightly more burned. The only functioning tech was Zarak's multi-tool and my emergency snack dispenser, which had dispensed nothing but lint and one angry beetle. "We should conserve oxygen," she said. "We have oxygen?" "Barely, your suit is leaking." I checked. She was right. My gauge was blinking a steady red warning, which I'd assumed was the suit's way of flirting. Apparently it was just dying. We took shelter in a nearby outcropping, really more of a cracked stone bowl. And I sat down, removing my helmet to breathe the filtered air from Zarak's canister. She shared it without hesitation. She even held the tube up for me, which might have been the most intimate gesture of my life, excluding that one time I high-fived a bartender on Earth and accidentally proposed. "You really didn't have to come," she said after a while, voice softer now. "I kinda did. You had a choice." "Yeah, but the option where I stay behind and wonder if you exploded? That wasn't very appealing." Zarak didn't respond immediately. She adjusted the setting on her weapon, then stared at the night sky, a cracked smear of violet and cold stars. "You confuse me." "Same," I said. "I confuse myself regularly. Just last week I microwaved a sock thinking it was leftover casserole." She turned toward me slowly. "Is that a ritual?" It was a Tuesday." We waited in silence. The wind picked up, whispering across the rocks like static trying to form sentences. I tried not to think about the fact that our best hope of rescue was someone back at base realizing we hadn't returned, doing the math, and sending help. Ideally before I turned into a dehydrated crouton. "Tell me something human," Zarak said suddenly. "Something irrational. That narrows it down to literally everything I do." "Tell me anyway," I thought, then smiled. "Okay. I once wrote a love poem to a girl in school, printed it, and accidentally emailed it to my math teacher." Zarak blinked. "What happened?" "She gave me an A. I think she was flattered." Zarak's mouth twitched. Her shoulders loosened. "My turn," she said. "I once destroyed a diplomatic drone because it gave me a compliment while whistling." "What was the compliment?" "Your posture suggests dominance and stability." "And the whistling?" "Mocking. Definitely mocking." We laughed. Hers short and sharp, mine half-choked through the filtered air. It echoed against the stone, strange and human and loud in a place where nothing had laughed in a long time. That night we huddled together under an emergency blanket. I tried not to pass out, face first onto her pauldron. She didn't say anything when I leaned against her. Just stayed still, warm, strong. And before I drifted off, I heard her whisper something in her native tongue. Low and almost uncertain. The translator pinged softly in my ear. "His presence is inefficient, but not unwanted." My heart hiccuped. I pretended to be asleep. We returned to the academy covered in soot, bruises, and what I could only describe as emotional plasma. Our ship, dragged back by a repair drone convoy that Zorak summoned using something called an emergency pride override code, looked like it had been chewed up by an asteroid and sneezed out by a wormhole. I limped down the loading ramp with all the grace of a haunted broomstick. Cadets stopped what they were doing to gawk. A few clapped, one saluted. Someone threw a protein bar. Trevor caught it midair and took a bite. Well, 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 he said, walking beside me like my unofficial press agent. If it isn't the ambassador of interspecies awkwardness. I'm fine, I said, blinking through the ache in my everything. Dude, you look like you lost a slap fight with a small moon. That's generous. It was more of a mutual misunderstanding with gravity and panic. Zorak walked behind us, silent and unreadable. The violet flush was still faintly visible along her jawline, but she kept her gaze forward. I couldn't tell if she was embarrassed, proud, or calculating the caloric output of dragging my unconscious body across a wasteland. Later that evening, I found out we were being awarded. Official commendation, hero status, probably a plaque. The Coalition Council summoned us to the main hall, which had been retrofitted for maximum pomp. Banners waved, holograms sparkled. A live band made up of sentient chimes attempted a rendition of the Academy anthem, but it sounded more like someone strangling wind. I stood next to Zorak on stage. She radiated discomfort. I radiated flop sweat. Ambassador Velnax 12 floated into view and spoke through its translator orb. For demonstrating cross-species collaboration, tactical improvisation, and resilience in the face of cybernetic assimilation, we bestow upon you the grand thread of unity. A robot floated forward holding two medals that looked suspiciously like repurposed frying pans. One was pinned to Zorak's chest with a metallic thunk. The other was taped gently to my jumpsuit with adhesive that smelled like mint. Then Velnax turned to us and said, "Please deliver a statement." I panicked. Zorak stepped up first, because of course she did. Her voice boomed across the hall. I was accompanied by a Terran. His tactics were unconventional. His limbs were fragile. His logic was erratic. He made jokes, many, inappropriate jokes. She paused. And yet, he faced danger, protected me, made the AI cry. I deem him a competent companion. I blinked. That was practically a love ballad. Everyone clapped, some more out of fear than enthusiasm. I stepped forward. I also deem Zorak competent, extra competent, mega competent, and terrifying, in a good way. I scratched my neck. Also, she makes a mean snack cube. Polite laughter. Velnax blinked disapprovingly. Trevor filmed everything from the fourth row. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed and the band broke into a rendition of Galactic Crush, Zorak stopped beside me. You hate crowds, she said. Only the parts where people look at me and expect me to speak. You performed adequately. I'll put that on my resume. She hesitated. Her hand brushed mine. Barely, just a touch. Then she looked away. I am recalibrating expectations. Is that code for feelings? Number it is a firmware update. I like your firmware. You are an idiot. I try. We stood there side by side while behind us, someone accidentally set off a confetti cannon filled with edible glitter. A perfect end to a very weird day. The day I was promoted to unofficial ambassador of Terran alien emotional diplomacy, I was wearing mismatched socks and had jelly from a breakfast ration cube on my collar. Zorak didn't comment on either of those things, which I chose to interpret as affection or extreme restraint. The Coalition's decision had come in a glowing transmission sphere that opened with fireworks and closed with a clause stating I'd caused measurable cross-cultural emotional resonance. Trevor read it out loud 3 times just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Congratulations, he said, tossing a celebratory snack cube at my face. You're now legally required to be charming. I was barely charming when I was unofficial, I said. Zorak stood beside me in full ceremonial armor, which made her look approximately 74% more terrifying than usual. She'd braided a tiny Terran flag into her shoulder strap. I didn't mention it. Neither did she. We boarded the diplomatic transport bound for the Interworld Peace Summit on Veltraxis Prime, where dignitaries from over 90 species gathered to talk about war peace, and whether jokes were a viable method of interstellar conflict resolution. I was scheduled to give a keynote. Ziracht was scheduled to stand nearby and threaten anyone who laughed at the wrong moment. The summit hall looked like someone had given an opera house to a sentient crystal and told it to go wild. Everything shimmered. The walls pulsed with ambient emotion. One of the chairs offered me a hug. "Decline," Ziracht advised. I did. The speech loomed. I rehearsed in the mirror, practicing facial expressions that wouldn't get me vaporized. I tried sincerity. I tried mild sarcasm. I tried a heartfelt monologue that ended with an apology to all known forms of intelligent slime. Ziracht watched patiently, then handed me a note. "Be exactly as ridiculous as you always are. Do not dishonor yourself with coherence." I might have cried just a little. She pretended not to see. When I finally stood at the podium, hundreds of eyes, organic, cybernetic, and occasionally glowing, focused on me. I cleared my throat. "Ladies, gentlemen, gelatinous beings, and whatever that is in the third row," a tentacle waved. "We come from different worlds. Some of us have claws. Some of us have limbs that occasionally detach during stress. Some of us flirt by sparring. Others flirt by throwing snack cubes and hoping for the best." Pause, a few chuckles, one hiss. "But all of us feel, badly, messily, hilariously, and sometimes, surprisingly, beautifully." I glanced at Ziracht. She didn't smile, but her mandibles twitched in a way that felt like home. "I'm not a hero. I'm a guy who accidentally flirted with a warrior who could have turned me into soup. And instead, she decided to teach me how to survive, and maybe even how to matter." I ended the speech by presenting a peace offering, a universal translator upgraded to detect sarcasm. It immediately misread the ambassador from Cygnus 4 and labeled him passive-aggressive. Applause followed, also a minor diplomatic scuffle, but mostly applause. Later, as we walked through the city of lights above Veltraxis Prime, Ziracht spoke. "You have evolved," she said. "Emotionally? Barely. But your posture no longer suggests imminent collapse." "I'll take it." We reached the overlook where stars stretched like spilled glitter. She took something from her belt pouch and handed it to me, a small carved token, her people's bonding emblem. "This does not mean what you think it means," she said. "What do I think it means?" "You're mine, until further notice." I blinked. "Cool," I said. "Do I get to give you something too?" She nodded. I handed her a handwritten coupon. One free neck massage, redeemable in crisis situations or Tuesdays. She studied it, then tucked it into her armor like it was a sacred artifact. We stood in silence, stars pulsing above, awkward affection between us like a shared secret. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was on the wrong planet. I felt exactly where I was supposed to be, next to her, ridiculous, illogical, and accepted.